Hi, okay, well, we'll get started. So today our speaker is Thatra, who I'm sure you all know. Nivi has been working as IRES's communication manager since 2020, helping to communicate our research to a broader audience. And prior to that, Nivi worked in the field of neuroscience and received a master's degree in bioinformatics from UBC, where she was also the science editor at the UBC student paper. And today she'll be helping all of us with our science communication skills. So I'll let you get started.
Just checking some things. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Emily, for the introduction. I wanted to start today by expressing my gratitude for the Musqueam people, the traditional owners and caretakers of the land we're working on. And now let's get started. So in these next 20 to 30 minutes, I'll be walking you through the basic principles of good science communication, how to develop your key messages for a lay abstract, and giving you advice on how to develop your digital presence as a researcher. And after that, we'll take some time to give you guys the time to do some of the work that I'm advising you to do. To start off, I'm just going to give you a minute to choose what to work on. So I really would like you to have a little tiny mini project in mind for the next 20 minutes while I'll be talking. So this is just your preliminary idea. You can change it as we're moving through the presentation. For now, just tell your neighbor what you're going to be working on. Introduce yourself if you don't know each other yet. This will get your communication muscles going. Okay, let's kind of regroup. So I'll start off with giving you the principles of good science communication. And I'm going to start off with a little bit of a metaphor. The first thing I want to say is that science communication involves a different set of skills, and the skills that you've been trained for in the academic environment are not the skills that you're being evaluated for when you're being a science communicator. So this is all to say, so just because, we live in a society, interaction and connection aren't necessarily intuitive skills. They are skills that can be built upon each other. A couple days ago, I was talking to Jaden. Is Jaden here? Hi, Jaden. And we had this great conversation that I wanted to build into this metaphor, where we were contrasting what it's like to write an academic paper versus what it's like to be a science communicator. So in the academic paper and in general academic evaluations, you are rewarded for including as much information as you can because you're being evaluated on being the expert on the topic. So you can imagine that you're a florist and you're putting on display everything that you've got. All the flowers are out there, you're arranging things very skillfully. You want all the details to be in your shop, easily organized and accessible. You're expected to display a lot of expertise. So this means that all the dialogue, discussion, opinions, facts about your research topic are things that you are going to be writing down and moving through systematically as you write an academic paper or a dissertation. But in science communication, what you're trying to do is to give the reader just the right amount of information. You're standing in front of your little florist shop. You're inviting people to come in so that they can have a conversation about topics that they don't know about. You're really just trying to invite the person in. You're telling someone, here's a sample bouquet to get you started. And you don't have to do all the thinking for them. You're just giving them the right amount of information so that they can do the thinking for themselves and so that they can participate in the conversation. And by the way, if you do come across researchers, reporters, someone in the science communication field who is trying to poke holes in your expertise, feel free to extricate yourself from that situation. As a science communicator, you're going to be the expert in the room, and they should be trying to learn from you, and then with a spirit of curiosity and generosity, engage with you in that conversation. So no press coverage or journalist is really worth your time if they're just trying to poke holes in your argument. So the first principle is know your audience. So in academic writing, you're displaying what you know, as I said. And in science communication, you can imagine bumping into a friendly neighbor, either someone on campus who might turn out to be a potential collaborator who doesn't know much about your field, or your neighbor in whatever sort of living environment setup you have going for you. And the next bit of science communication best principles is to avoid jargon, because in academic writing, it's great to use and define field-specific terms. That shows that you are really familiar with the context you're operating in. You're contributing valuable, novel information to a field that's already kind of established before moving ahead and making large sort of vague claims. But in science communication, jargon is just going to confuse people. They're not going to engage with you, which is the whole point. In academic writing, more details are helpful. In science communication, you want to keep it concise. So you want someone to understand you, and you want them to understand you quickly. So a radio interview on average will be 5 to 7 minutes long. A TV story on average will be 2 minutes long, or 14, that doesn't sound right, 14-word clip. But I think the thing to remember is the TV story will be around 12 minutes long, and then a print interview will be anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes. So let's use these principles to get started on building a lay abstract. And if you all aren't already aware, writing a lay abstract is a requirement for UBC dissertations for all graduate students. And the maximum words, the limit for a lay abstract at UBC is 150 words. So what is the key message? What are the key messages that we're going to be trying to identify when we're writing a lay abstract? Key message is the central idea that you'd like to convey in plain language. There are in this series of examples I'm going to give you, I'm going to have 3 central ideas, so 3 key messages, and each message should be 1 normal length sentence. You're not trying to show off your knowledge of em dashes and semicolons and complex sentence structure. 1 plain sentence is really great. And you should be able to support each key message with data or illustrative examples and illustrative statistics. So for most people, large numbers are going to be hard to grasp. Even though we want to we're tempted to say things like 3 million people were affected in this subcontinent by this virus. You should maybe think about a different sort of way of displaying that fact. You can speak in proportions or metaphors. So half the population of this subcontinent, which has the population equivalent of Vancouver, were affected. Speaking in proportions is good. Speaking with images, metaphors are great. And stick with what you know. Don't try to make a metaphor that is so complex that you're gonna have to, learn something completely new. I think the florist example, I don't know that much about florists, but it's something that I could generally speak about. And if I kind of know generally how florists work, I can maybe assume that my audience also generally knows how florists work. So that's what I mean by stick with what you know. Okay, so I'm going to use this example to build out a lay abstract. And I'm going to apply the principles that I started off with in my talk. So I'm using as an example a study from Kai's lab from a couple years ago. PhD student at the time, Mayan, was the lead author and did a fantastic Twitter thread about this paper, which is what inspired me to grab this for an example, because within that Twitter thread were the key messages of the paper. So even though I'm not an expert in the facts of this paper, I knew that the key messages were verified by the expert. So the study is titled Woody Perennial Polycultures in the US Midwest, Enhance Biodiversity and Ecosystem Functions. And I'll ask myself the first question of science communication: who is my audience? And I'm going to say that my audience for writing this lay abstract that I'll present to you is the Canadian public. They want to know how agriculture can help sustain both people and nature. You can also check lay abstract requirements to wherever you're submitting to. As I said, UBC's requirements are 150 word max. Each blog that you're submitting to, or the sort of publications that are associated with journals that you might be submitting to, have their own requirements. And that's great. That helps you narrow down who your audience is and what sort of concrete details you need to address. So the second principle is avoid jargon, identify complex words. So some of you might have already seen this website that I presented last year. I really like it. It's really useful if you're not sure what a jargon-like word is. It's at scienceandthepublic.com. It's called the dejargonizer, and you can paste in any any amount of text that you want. I think any amount. You can paste in your text. So here I've pasted in the abstract from the paper, not the lay abstract, just the physical abstract. And it gives you this suitability score at the bottom, like that I put at the bottom. I don't really go by the specific score. I do look at the words in orange and the words in red, which it's showing me are words that I should pay attention to and maybe think about using different words if I'm writing my lay abstract. So what I noticed right away is woody perennial polycultures, which are keywords that are in the title of the paper and that are in the abstract. Those are going to be jargon words. I tend to get confused between perennial and annual. I do know what polycultures are, but it doesn't really mean much to someone who wants to know about nature and it doesn't mean much who wants to know about nature and the environment. So the third principle is to keep your key messages concise. So now we're going to try to craft 3 messages, avoiding the jargon that I identified, and then going to move on to supporting each message with a cool data point or engaging fact from your work. So here's one message that I pulled from the abstract and then rewrote it, including a supporting fact. So in my supporting fact, I've replaced woody perennial polycultures with trees and shrubs, because what we're learning is that growing more food and trees and shrubs is possible and that it's better for the climate crisis. So you can ask some guiding questions as you write your key messages and as you provide your supporting facts. What does the audience need to know and why? So you could even think of it as each key message answers each of these points. What did you find? Why are your findings important? And what are the applications of your research? I find this template to be helpful when I'm writing a lay abstract or just trying to outline, maybe even trying to outline a talk with these key messages and then the supporting facts below them. think it's interesting because as a writer and someone who enjoys writing, I want to actually deviate from a template. I don't want to write in outline form. Sometimes I think that can be boring if you've read so many essays, whatever, think pieces, they often don't follow this format. And that's because their aims are different. They're trying to tell us a different type of story. With science communication, though, following a sort of logical structure, following a sort of predictable structure is something that can be very helpful, so that people quickly grasp what you're saying so that they can take the key messages and apply it to whatever their questions are. So you can use the template in various ways. You can start off by writing your key messages first and then going in and finding your supporting facts. You could write your key message and then write the supporting facts below them and kind of think about how the second supporting fact can transition easily into your key message. So in my second supporting fact, I've already written down and introduced the concept of trees and shrubs so that in my key message, it's a nice transition into that key message. So when I put them all together, it's not just like I've thrown in a key message randomly. It's not just a bullet point. It is related to the fact that I've given before. Some of your supporting facts can be images. If you start compiling images while you're writing your lay abstract, that's great. Reporters love it. Science communications people love it. I would really encourage you to send me images if you're part of IRES and you want your research to be available for the wider public. So next, you tie it all together, you add your transition, make sure each key message flows into the next, and ask some recap questions. And I'll just show you what the abstract looks like. My lay abstract looked like when I rewrote it using the key messages. So you can see that there's a call to action at the very end. Growing food on trees and shrubs isn't the status quo in most of our farming practices. Let's change that. That wasn't in my key message initially, but that's a nice engaging way to write down what I implied by my third key message. And then I plugged this into the jargonizer again to see if I'm using words that are going to be jargon words. And I made sure that if I am using those sorts of words, perennial plants, for example, I define it right after. There's some words where you do have to just use your common sense and understand that people can kind of figure out what temperate climate means given the context of the situation of the sentence. Okay. So I'm going to move on and talk about digital presence for researchers. So let's say you've kind of got your key messages, you've got an abstract, and then you want to apply that same principle to yourself. How do you present your research, what it is that you're interested in, who you are as a scholar? How do you present that online? And the way you do that, well, first, let me motivate why you'd want to do that. So how you present yourself online is often the first impression you make on collaborators. There's a really good reason for why you should have a digital presence. People are Googling you. People are just trying to find out information of how to contact you, where you're situated, what's the kind of work that you're interested in doing. So even if you're not very comfortable with having all of your information available online, there are ways to offer just the right amount of information so that you will come up in search engines. You don't need to provide your phone number, your address. You don't even need to provide your photo if you're uncomfortable with that. You can find a nice stock image of maybe the institution that you're a part of. So you could use UBC's logo, you could use IRES's logo. But you do want to be able, you do want to make sure that people can reach out to you and find you if they search your name and your expertise. So search engine optimization is just, it's become way too fancy of a term, way too sort of overused, because for businesses who are competing with each other, they are trying to pop up highest on these search engines. They're often offering very similar services. You as a person, hopefully, I don't know what your values are, but you're not necessarily competing with all of the other scholars that are out there. What you want is yourself. You're really only competing with yourself and people who have very similar names to you as you. So just make sure that you are identifiable on the internet. And the way to do that is to make sure that key terms that are associated with you and your name are in your profiles. So your research interests, and where you're situated, that kind of thing. So another reason to have an online presence is so that you can amplify the values that you care about. So this is something that Kai Chan works on and has really spearheaded a project called cosphere.net, and you can check out Kai's work at Cosphere. I really like this theory of change that's being presented. So unfortunately, whether you like it or not, we are stuck with social media. So we are stuck with being people online. So one way you can think of it is we might as well use it for good. We might as well use it to amplify the values that we care about. So usually what happens is there are people in this room who care about the environment, but there's a wall that comes up because the common culture seems to disagree with us. But what this graphic is trying to say is that we can actually help each other over that wall by not remaining the silent majority. We want to start sharing our values so we can get over that wall, and we can realize that there are other people out there who care about the same values that you care about. And hello, Cosphere folks over there. I think you're part of Cosphere, right? Okay. So for social media, here are some tips for your social media profiles. I know that Twitter, there are things happening with Twitter that we are all not supportive of. But Twitter, from a science communicator's perspective, it is sticking around. It exists. There are a lot of scientists on Twitter. And it seems to be a really great platform to kind of blend your professional and personal interests. And when you are creating a Twitter or LinkedIn profile, my LinkedIn profile is on the very right of the screen. You'll see 2 Twitter profiles on the left. Use the keywords that are associated with your research. Words like synergy and being a creative thinker are not keywords. They're too generalizable. You can add your values if that is important to you, as I mentioned in the last slide. But those values should be quite specifically focused on your professional interests and research topic. And I just wanted to say, in the bios that you write, it's great to add links in the little bio itself. So these bios, the way that social media works is if you hover over someone's name when you're on another person's profile, those little pieces will pop up. That little bio pops up underneath your name. So that is someone's first impression of you if they're hovering over your name. So the more information you can provide in that little bio at the bottom underneath your name, the better. And you can use the, I forgot the name of the symbol, but you can use the straight line to kind of divide up different parts of your bio. You can use commas, you can use the dots. And this is just a heads up that you're on social media, your likes and your interactions are visible. Just pointing to, okay, I can't point right now, but you'll see the little retweet that UBC Public Humanities has retweeted that tweet. So I can see what other people have retweeted on my timeline, even without going to that profile. So just heads up, you should be retweeting things and liking things that are of a professional, in a professional context, if that's what you're using your Twitter profile for. Okay, so I would like you guys to practice. I'll be here to answer questions in the Zoom chat, or people in the audience. You can also ask me questions, but I do have to stick to this podium area. And to practice, I've put a bunch of things up on this slide. So pick one of these little prompts and go for it. At the end of the talk later today, I'll send a summary email. So everything that's on the slides will be in that summary email and all the links on the slide. So yeah, here are some options. Given what you want to work on, go for it. Or I can answer questions too if people want. Hi. I don't know. I just, okay, hello. Okay. So Sarah Louise's question was, what are the expectations for IRES's official social media post captions? So if you want to, if you put out a publication or you want to send me something that you've done and you want it to be in our social media profiles, what sort of caption should you send me? For Twitter, the character limit is, I believe, 280. So for Twitter, I would say just send me one sentence if you can, because the caption also needs to include a link to the work that you're presenting. So for Twitter, those are the requirements. One sentence, so that it leaves room for the link that you want people to click on. For all other social media profiles, there isn't a word limit or a character limit, so you can write something much more verbose, but just keep in mind that, yeah, people are scrolling through feeds. They are looking for very concise summaries. And the other requirements would be, if you can send me an image associated with your paper, super helpful. It's really not a requirement. That's something that I'm happy to do, and our Work Learn student is very happy to put together an image. And also I'm really excited about infographics. So if you have an infographic idea, like if you can visualize it, but you don't necessarily want to execute it yourself, I can help you out with that. I really like doing that kind of thing. So just give me an idea. We can email back and forth. And yeah, so if you have an image idea, let me know. If you already have a graphic, send it over. Other requirements, please do keep an eye on the embargo dates for your paper. So don't be sending me work which the journal has explicitly said is not ready to be publicized. Or if you do send me that work, just tell me what that date is. You can share it, but I need to know the date. And I have in the email, I'll include a style guide for captions, social media captions. Style guide meaning what sort of tone you should be using, because some captions, like LinkedIn, the captions do need to be much more formal than the captions for Twitter, for example. The way that I get around that is I just don't use emojis in our LinkedIn posts, and the Twitter posts, I use emojis. while you're working, I'll just add some more information to my talk. So if you don't have a headshot that you're comfortable with, I can attempt taking a headshot for you. The headshot that I think that the place that I take the headshot has good lighting, which is the ARL lobby. The photos look really nice in my opinion, and I will not be offended at all if you end up hating them and don't want to use them. So yeah, just come talk to me, come see me. Hi, do you have a question? Yeah, good question. If you look the same, it's probably fine. And you look the same according to yourself or according to others? So hopefully you look the same according to others. Yeah, so I'd be happy to take headshots of people. All we need is your face up to your face and your shoulders. No need to be in formal attire. A professional headshot. This isn't something that's like, you know, it's not super formal. It just will have a blurry background and your face will be the highlight. So if you want help with that, I'm happy to help you out. The other thing I wanted to add is, as students and as researchers, it's a really good idea to have an institutional email address. And the institutional email address that you should be using is your alumni.ubc.ca account. The reason for that is because your student.ubc.ca account is going to expire. So UBC encourages all of its students to register for your alumni.ubc.ca account, which is never going to expire. You'll always have access to that account. And once you have that account, you can, what's the word? You can tie it to, you can integrate it with Gmail or with other email providers, so that you can basically just make the account and forget about it. And all of the email that's sent to your institutional email address will show up in your normal inbox. Yeah, it just looks quite professional to be able to offer someone your ubc.ca account. And it won't expire, so that's helpful. And I think if you're faculty, that shouldn't be a problem. Sarah Lisa. Yeah, I don't know about. The employee accounts do expire. I do remember now, because our work learn students, their email addresses expire. So yeah, so if you've been a TA and if you've received an email address for being a TA, that email account unfortunately will expire, and all the emails you've received will be gone. UBC has these like policies that are weird, which is that if you have an alumni.ubc.ca account, that information is more your property than it is if you have a student.ubc.ca account.
But like, where do I log into the alumni email? I get so.
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay. Yeah, the question, and there's an answer in the audience. The question was, how do you log into your alumni.ubc.ca account, because the student login apparently is different. And Jaden is going to give us the answer.
I have a fast mail account and I use that all the time. So my there's separate I tell people my
it's redmail.lmi.ca that will give you access to
Okay, so we're hearing that webmail.alumni.ubc.ca webmail.alumni.ubc.ca gives you access to both of those accounts. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. So your student.ubc.ca account will link to your alumni account if you have both of those created, which is great. So if you can create that alumni account now, it'll save you issues in the future. And you access both of them via webmail.alumni.ubc.ca. Okay, we have a few more minutes in the room. So I'm going to put up my final slide just to say thank you for being here. There are some resources that are on this slide if you want to follow up with them. Feel free to contact me at any time if you have questions, if you're part of IRES or not. I'm happy to try to help you. So if you are part of IRES, as a reminder, I am your communications manager, which means that I can serve as a liaison between UBC Media Relations and yourself, and the liaison between, let's say, a reporter and yourself. So if you're looking for training on how to speak to reporters, if you're looking to be connected to media relations, I am happy to help you do that. And just reach out to me and ask how to move forward. There are other things that I can help you with. You know, there's a question about how to write captions for social media. If you want help on writing captions, happy to do that. If you want help creating a Twitter thread to bring people into your research topic, that's a great thing that I can help with. Yeah, and oh yes, I can also help you place an op-ed if you're looking to place op-eds. There are a couple smaller journals that I think it would be great if we could get IRES published in. I just haven't had something pop up in my mind as a great fit for those smaller journals, but we could try. And there are more resources at news.ubc.ca. So if you go to news.ubc.ca and you go to the very far right and click services for faculty, there is this section called resources for communicators, which is super useful. It'll tell you a bit about The Conversation, which is a media outlet where all of the articles are published by people affiliated with academic institutions and research institutions, usually. Very cool outlet if you want to try publishing in The Conversation. And there's media training resources on this website as well. And I think that is all. Thanks for being here. And we can keep chatting, we can keep asking questions or working. Yes, Dan.
Just for anyone that was also interested, I think I found the answer to my question is that the alumni addresses were deprecated on August 17th, 2020. And so now we will see their spots, and then it will change to our CWL at alum.ubc.ca when we graduate. We're no longer an active student, so we can't have an alumni.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good for me to know. So we cannot have an alumni.ubc.ca.
According to this website, I mean,
Okay. There's new information.
but it is it.ubc.ca.
Okay, that's good to know. So the information now is when it comes to email addresses, your student.ubc.ca email address remains into perpetuity? No.
That will still accept email to that address, and it'll forward to a new address called alum.ubc.ca.
Okay.
And then from then on, that'll be the
So
actual address that it's assigned.
okay, so if you've been receiving email, you're no longer a student, but you're receiving email to your student email ID. It's actually being sent to alum.ubc.ca. So then you'd have to relink your inboxes to alum.ubc.ca.
That's for anyone going after August 17th.
Okay, and that's for anyone who joined after August 17th, 2020. Repeating it for people on Zoom.
No, it says
It happens automatically. What doesn't happen automatically is if you have linked. So I had my student.ubc.ca address linked to my Gmail inbox, but I'd never linked my alumni or alum.ubc.ca email address to my inbox. So I'm not receiving those emails.
like the address. That's how I use
Does anybody in the room know if your student.ubc.ca email can be used to get a Zoom, to get a UBC Zoom account? Yeah, that's your employee one gets you the UBC Zoom account. And that's one of the questions in the chat, and that seems to be correct. Should I exit the? What's that beeping one?
I think it's just the